Welcome back. Today we're trying to troubleshoot some gas gauge readings on an 85 Chevy. Regardless of how full the tank is, gas gauge only reads 3/4 full. Right now the tank is full, 25 gallons. This is true regardless. So I turn the ignition to generator. Gas gauge stays 3/4 full. This is a new gas gauge, and we also replaced the sending unit in another video, and so now we have to troubleshoot the wiring, looking at maybe some bad ground connections. So we're going to check that out. Alright, so we're looking at the shop manual here, which has been a really helpful resource, and I found the page to show us the wiring from the fuel gauge back to the sending unit at the gas tank. So we have the fuel gauge here, and we can trace down to C214 for the gasoline V8 engine, that's us, and then to the sending unit in the back. There's the ground wire, and it gives us the ohm readings. So right now I'm going to take a peek at this C214. It's in the left rear corner of the trunk, and just see if the connections there are good, and we'll keep working our way through. The C214 looks like in the trunk. It's in the left rear corner underneath some carpet. So we're just going to pull that out and take a look, make sure the connections aren't corroded, and see where things are. Alright, so left rear of the trunk here, down in the corner underneath the carpet, you're going to see that connector right there. We're going to take that off. That's the C214, and we'll check the connections in there. And just for reference, this is a 7mm socket head right there. You can see here the wires that come in from the engine side, and these go down and handle the brake lights and the sending unit. This goes up to the trunk light above, and so I'm just going to take these apart just to inspect. So when this is out, we'll go up to the front, and the fuel gauge with the wire to the sending unit disconnected should then read way past full. Now we have this apart, and if you look in there real close, you can see there's some green goop. Looks like maybe some copper corrosion on these connectors as well. Hard to see there. There you go. I'll take a look at that in a minute. But let's check the gas gauge now, see if it reads way past full. Okay, we'll turn on the ignition here. And as expected, the gauge goes up way past full. So I've cleaned off some of the connection, that green goop here, probably some corroded copper, and same thing inside. Let's see if we can get a better view here. There you go. And so clean that all out with a file and some Q-tips and a brush, steel brush, and a little rubbing alcohol. I'll connect this up, and we'll just double check, see if the reading comes back down to 3/4 full. Alright, so turn on the ignition here, watching what the gauge reading comes down to now that we've reconnected C214 in the back, and somewhat disappointing, you can see it's coming down below full. So we know that those connections to the sending unit are good. Unfortunately, this is looking like we may have to chase down a problem with the ground, so we'll do that now. Another test here, according to the shop manual, if we're going to check the fuel gauge. Even though I know the fuel gauge is good because it's an OEM replacement from one of my previous videos, there's a section here that we can see to troubleshoot some of the wiring. You see C214 separated before and cleaned off those connections, and it says now to connect the jumper wire between the ground and the pink wire on the instrument panel side of that C214. We're going to turn the ignition switch to run to see if the fuel gauge shows empty. If it does, that may tell me it's the pink wire between C214 and the fuel tank. So we're going to check that now. Come right over here, what I've done is I've connected a jumper. This is the connector as it goes in. You can see the pink wires on the left. So I've connected a jumper wire to the left, which is the pink, to go up to the dashboard, and the other end is to the ground here on the inside of the trunk. So now we'll check and see if the fuel gauge reads empty. Alright, so we'll see what happens here. And boom, the gauge goes empty. Got to check the wire between 214 and the gas tank. Okay, so the fuel gauge showed empty. And it says check and repair the pink wire between C214 and the fuel tank itself. If okay, check the sender itself. Now, previous video I replaced the sending unit. The wire connection from there down looked okay. So, what I'm going to still suspect here is that at least we know from this part of the test that the wire between C214 and the trunk up to the gas gauge itself is good, and I'll take it that far. We know the fuel gauge works as well. So from here we'll just double check some of the other wiring, but then it may be a ground problem, so we'll keep working on it. Okay, one more little experiment here. What we're doing is connecting basically a small resistor that I had on hand right there in between the C214 connection to the instrument panel and into the connection for C214 to the sending unit. So that's going to give us a little more resistance here. Another twist on the experiment. 2 more resistors here added in series. Let's see if we can see if it helps move the needle. So now basically from the C214 at the gas tank side, we're going through 3 resistors and then the jumper to the connection at C214 for the way to the dashboard. Okay, let's see what happens. It's moving the gas gauge closer to full because we have more resistance. Now we have about 15 ohms of resistance on there. So that's telling us that we've got a little bit of troubleshooting left to do. Okay, so we're up under the car here, just squeezed underneath. I'm showing you now where the ground connection is for the sending unit to the frame, to the body. And I'm going to take this off here and I'm just going to clean off underneath because there is some rust, and see if we can improve the ground connection here. This is a new wire to the new sending unit that we put in the previous video. So we'll check that out and hopefully that'll make a difference, but we'll see. Okay, so we just dremeled a little bit here to clean off this opening. As you can see the metal, see if there was a problem here with the connection for the ground. And we'll reattach the ground wire now. Alright, so we've got that reconnected now, ground wire to the new sending unit. We'll see if that makes a difference. Right, so now with the ground wire reconnected after cleaning that connection, let's see if this makes a difference here. And no movement. Alright, so next step is going to have to be to check the connections behind the instrument panel again, and from there down to the fuse box.